I am a big fan of The Mandalorian, and that goes hand in hand with being a fan of Pedro, of course. Look, I even have a couple Funkos, but to celebrate the new movie that came out, I am gonna watch all Mandalorian episodes, plus the Book of Boba Fett, and shortly tell you what happened in each episode, and then tell you which episodes were my favorite and what I thought of The Mandalorian in general. Also, I will be drawing on the wall and we will update the tier list. I first was going to release this video before making the review of the Mandalorian and Grogu movie, but it took me longer to watch everything and I started on May the 4th. So that's why this one came after. And I, of course, wanted to get the review out of the movie first, when that already came out. So I hope you will understand, but let's get into it. Mandalorian Season 1 has 8 episodes, which released in November of 2019, and these are the episodes. In Chapter 1, The Mandalorian, we meet Din Djarin, aka The Mandalorian, aka Mando. He tracks down the target for a well-paying mysterious client played by Werner Herzog. We also meet a couple other Mandalorians. We also meet Quill, who is an Ugnaught, and IG-11, a bounty hunter droid that Mando shoots at the end of the episode. There are actually a bunch of characters in this episode because there also is Grief Karga, played by Carl Weathers, who sadly passed away in 2024. And at the end of the episode, we meet the famous Grogu. But at this point, he was only known as Baby Yoda or the Child, because he is not actually Yoda, the fans called him Baby Yoda. In Chapter 2, The Child, Mando has to fight some Jawas and a Mudhorn to get his stuff back that those same Jawas stole. Not much else happens in this episode other than the Jawas eating an egg. In Chapter 3, The Sin, Mando delivers the child back to the client with some questions. He cares for the child and doesn't want anything to happen to it. So he returns to save it, even though that causes a lot of chaos for him and his Mandalorian partners. Mando does have some shiny new Beskar armor now. In Chapter 4, Sanctuary, we travel to a new planet called Sorgon. Mando tries to lay low here after what happened in Episode 3. In this episode, he meets Cara Dune, an ex-rebel fighter. Together, they save a small village from raiding pirates who also have an AT-ST. In Chapter 5, The Gunslinger, Mando gets hit by a bounty hunter and has to make an emergency stop at a workshop from Pelimoto and her droids. We, by the way, keep hearing every episode that Mando hates droids and wants nothing to do with them. Mando takes on a job this episode to pay Peli back for the fixes that she does to his ship. He works together with Toro Kalekan to take down a gunslinger called Fennec Shand, who will be more important in later seasons and shows. She is played by Ming-Na Wen, who voices Mulan in the Disney animated movie. Fun fact for you. In Chapter 6, The Prisoner, Mando works together with a crew to free someone, but this is all a trap as they betray Mando and lock him up in the prison. We meet Bill Burr's character here called Mayfeld, and also Ji-On, Burke, Zero, and Quinn. Burke, by the way, is played by Clancy Brown. In Chapter 7, The Reckoning, Mando returns to his planet Navarro. He assembles an entire team to take down the client, who keeps hunting Mando throughout the season. We learn that Quill reprogrammed IG-11 to be a nursing droid. We meet the big villain this episode, Moff Gideon, played by Giancarlo Esposito, and sadly, 2 scout troopers shoot and kill Quill. In Chapter 8, Redemption, Mando and the team have to escape Moff Gideon. Mando almost dies, and this is the first time we see him take off his helmet. Yes, it's actually Pedro Pascal, but don't worry, he is fine and lives. IG-11 blows himself up to save the team, and Mando gets a jetpack and takes out Moff Gideon with it. But he doesn't die. We even learn that Gideon has the Darksaber. Mando now continues his journey and is going to find a place for the child to grow up with his own kind. This is my favorite episode from this season, mostly because all these characters are together now, which also is in Episode 7, and I prefer a show that is not afraid to kill off characters, makes the stakes go higher. And with Quill and IG-11 both dying in these episodes, I don't know, but that raises it for me. It's sad, but it feeds the episodes and makes it more dramatic, and that's what I like. But let's see if it's my favorite episode from all The Mandalorian or not later in this video when we visit the other seasons as well. The standout these episodes to me are, well, the first one is for sure a great introduction to the show. It introduces us to a bunch of characters that also pays off in the last episode. But I also like Episode 4 and 5, where Mando goes on little side quests. What I also appreciate and remember from watching the show when it came out, and this is something that isn't done a lot by Disney afterwards, but they hid Grogu or Baby Yoda or the child from the trailers and marketing, merchandising and everything. So it would be a big surprise when you end the episode. In my memory, Disney has never really repeated something like this again because it was a real game changer to the show itself. Now, let me tell you some good and bad about this season. Something that I noticed is that there are a lot of moments where a character is going to shoot someone, or Baby Yoda most of the time, and then it cuts away and you hear a blast. So they make you think that they actually shot, but then it cuts back to the shooter being shot by another person. There are a bunch of times where this happens and it gets old and predictable. I can't really think of another bad thing about this season other than the time jumps that you don't realize are happening. It feels like all these episodes maybe take place in 1 or 2 weeks, but it's actually 3 to 4 months. You don't feel that at all. What I do like is that they keep to OG Star Wars. Grogu is a puppet most of the time, and IG-11 looks like he is stop motion. Even Quill was made with practical effects. The Mandalorian is also one of the first shows or projects that I remember that uses a volume. It's this big screen around the set instead of a green or blue screen. Makes everything look super nice and well lit and like they are actually there. And it's just feeling like a space western, which I love. It just expands the world of Star Wars even more, which is also just great. Disney took a big risk with making their first Disney Plus show about a faceless guy that you've never heard before and a puppet that can't even speak, but it works. Plus the fact that they hid Grogu from the trailers, which was a big marketing point, but they decided not even to use it. None of it should have worked, but it did, and it worked better than they probably expected. So props to Disney for that, or just Jon Favreau, Taika Waititi, and Dave Filoni, and all the other creators of the show. Mando himself is just a badass character, and Pedro does this voice so well that it's satisfying to hear. Sadly, we only see his face once in the entire season, but the badassness of the character makes up for it, and the music is on point as well. The Mando theme itself is iconic, but in episode 8, the music you hear when Moff Gideon flies in his TIE fighter is also very, very good. I mean, the Mando theme also is in my Spotify playlist that is inspired by Pedro Pascal. Now, let's move on to season 2 of The Mandalorian. Chapter 9, The Marshal. Mando travels to Tatooine after some intel of there being another Mandalorian on the planet. This is Cobb Vanth, played by Timothy Olyphant, the Marshal of Mos Pelgo. Mando wants the armor back after learning that Cobb bought it from some Jawas. The armor, by the way, is Boba Fett's armor, who we also see at the end of the episode. The town works together with Tusken Raiders to defeat and kill a crate dragon. They successfully do so in a very epic way. I think it's cool that we see Mando speak with the Tusken Raiders in their language. It shows how skilled he is. Chapter 10, The Passenger. Mando needs to take a passenger with him who can also lead him to new Mandalorians. But they need to hide from X-Wing pilots and are now stuck on a icy planet that is crawling with ice spiders. Not ice spice, but ice spiders. The passenger is a frog lady with her eggs, and Grogu keeps eating these eggs. It's a comedic episode, but it ties in with the next one. So, chapter 11, The Heirs. In this episode, Grogu gets eaten, but then Mando and Grogu get saved by 3 other Mandalorians, and one of them is Bo-Katan, a Mandalorian that first appeared in season 4 of the Clone Wars, which I have never watched. They help each other and tell Mando where to find a Jedi. Chapter 12, The Siege. Mando goes back to the old gang to defeat some Imperial stormtroopers, and Grogu goes to school. It's a fun episode though, but so much doesn't happen. We do see Cara Dune again and Greef Karga and this mithril from chapter 1. Chapter 13, The Jedi. Mando teams up with Ahsoka Tano to free a village that was held hostage. We finally learn the child's name. It's Grogu. Ahsoka can't train Grogu and sends him to a new planet. This episode gave me kinda Kill Bill vibes, which is a good thing. It's a very beautiful episode. Chapter 14, The Tragedy. Mando brings Grogu to a new planet where the Force is strong, but they get interrupted by Boba Fett and Fennec Shand. Boba wants his armor back, but they also get interrupted by stormtroopers, and some dark troopers even take Grogu away. He now is held captive by Moff Gideon. Also, the Razor Crest Mandalorian's ship it gets totally destroyed. Chapter 15, The Believer. Now flying in the Slave One, which is Boba Fett's ship, Mando assembles a team to track Moff Gideon, but he needs help from an old enemy. This is Mix Mayfeld. Together, they disguise themselves as stormtroopers and get the data, but Mando needs to take off his helmet in front of people for the first time. They accomplish their mission and Mix gets to go free. Chapter 16, The Rescue. Mando assembles a team once again, just like the final episode of Season 1. This time in the team, we have Boba Fett, Fennec Shand, Bo-Katan, Koska Reeves, and Cara Dune. Together, they rescue Grogu from Moff Gideon. Mando beats him, which makes him the rightful owner of the Darksaber. But also, they almost all die by the hands of an army of dark troopers. But then one X-Wing comes in to save them all. But this is Luke Skywalker. He came with R2 to save Grogu. He wants to train him like a Jedi. Mando face reveals once again, but this time to show Grogu his face, since he is sending him off with Luke and the episode ends. At this point, I want to say Pedro isn't in the suit anymore. I think he did more of the acting in season 1, but even then there was already a body double in the suit and another person for stunts. So Pedro only does the voice. Same will be for the following seasons and movie. Also, Pedro is just too busy to be in the suit. Brendan Wayne, family member of John Wayne, is the body double in the suit and does the acting. And Lateef Crowder is the stunt double. So shout out to them for doing an amazing job at portraying this badass character. Now let's talk about the season overall. This season has more characters in it, of course, but also characters that we have seen from other Star Wars projects, which season 1 didn't do. This is so Mando has a bigger impact to the overall Star Wars story and is not just a solo character in this large universe. Also, Grogu has a lot more scenes now since they didn't need to hide him from the marketing. I like all the little side quests that they go on and the people from season 1 that appear for an episode or two again in this season, plus the setup with Boba Fett and Fennec Shand for their own show. Now my favorite episode or episodes might be Chapter 9, The Marshal with Cobb Vanth. I love how they all work together with the Tusken Raiders. It is also the only episode that reminded me the most of the first season. The other episodes that I love from the season are Chapter 13 and 15. The episode where we meet Ahsoka is just very cool, with the lighting and atmosphere, and the fight scenes with Ahsoka also are very nice, especially the one at the very end. And the Chapter 15, I just think the action is great and the stakes are high, which makes it an episode where you really lean forward. And Bill Burr is just very funny, but also believably serious in this episode. I prefer season 2 over season 1, but both of them are amazing. Now let's watch the Book of Boba Fett. The Book of Boba Fett, chapter 1 to 4. We follow Boba Fett in two timelines. One where Boba Fett takes the throne of Title or Daimyo at Jabba's palace, which after his death was the property of Bib Fortuna, and now is Boba's. He works together with Fennec Shand. There are people going against Boba and already are sending assassins to kill him. Also, the twins want the throne, but then they don't. Twins are Hutts, by the way, cousins of Jabba. It's weird how quickly they gave up. The other timeline we follow is the one we see when Boba is in a Bacta tank. We see how Boba escaped the Sarlacc pit from Return of the Jedi. He then learns the way of the Tusken Raiders, but they all die. New people arrive in Mos Espa, and Boba is going to need help of a familiar face, which brings me to Chapter 5, The Return of the Mandalorian. This entire episode is about Din, and we don't even see Boba Fett or anyone from the other episodes. Mando finds the other Mandalorians, which are only two. He still has the Darksaber and tries to use or control it. He tells the other Mandalorians that he took off his helmet in front of someone and now he isn't a Mandalorian anymore, unless he goes to the living waters underneath the mines of Mandalore. But Mandalore is destroyed, so Mando now travels to Mos Eisley to meet with Pelimoto. Together they build a new ship for Mando, a Naboo and one starfighter. He also meets back with Fennec Shand to help Boba, but first he needs his little green buddy. Chapter 6, From the Desert Comes a Stranger. Mando visits Grogu, who is training with Luke and Ahsoka, but he decides not to see Grogu in person because this would damage the focus that Grogu should have on the Force. So Mando goes to Boba Fett and also learns that they need more people. So he asks Cobb Vanth. Vanth agrees, and minutes after Mando leaves, a mysterious man walks from the desert and shoots Vanth. This man or bounty hunter is Cad Bane. Chapter 7, In the Name of Honor. Finally, we follow Boba Fett again in his own show. This is the final episode. They have to beat the Spice Runners on Tatooine. Boba gets help from Mando, Fennec Shand, the weird cyborg teenagers and the people of Freetown, which are the people that Cobb Vanth was the marshal of. Also, Boba rides a Rancor. Anyway, Boba even kills Cad Bane, but it all feels kinda cheap in my opinion. Oh yeah, Grogu does come back. He chooses to be a Mandalorian and now is reunited with Din. Overall, this show isn't great, but annoying that you have to watch this to understand the story of The Mandalorian, even though you can just watch it from episode 5 to 7 and that will be alright. The Mandalorian episodes also feel very different than the Boba Fett episodes. I would have preferred it if the show would just follow Boba's time with the Tusken Raiders. That was a more interesting story anyway. The Mando episodes are actually very cool and feel just like out of his own show, and you forget that you're even watching the Book of Boba Fett. Also, no face reveal by Mando. This show is on Letterboxd, by the way, but it doesn't credit Pedro. Well, sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't, so yeah. But I give the show 2.5 stars, which is mostly for the Mando episodes. I would rank this at the 15th spot. And I will draw something on the wall for this actually. I mean, why not? So here it goes, Boba's helmet. Now let's move on to the final season of The Mandalorian. Season 3, Chapter 17. The Apostate. Mando and Grogu go to the planet where the Armorer and Paz Vizsla are on, with even more Mandalorians. He once again learns that he isn't a Mandalorian anymore because he removed his helmet. He does tell her that he will bathe in the living waters of Mandalore, blah blah blah. You know the rest. Mando now visits Navarro, which looks totally different than before. Greef Karga is now the High Magistrate of Navarro. Mando needs IG-11 back, alive for some reason, but pirates visit and kind of cause trouble, which also appears later in the episode. But Mando shoots some of them down. IG-11 now gets repaired by some Anzellans. These guys are actually pretty funny and also appear in the movie. But Mando needs a new part to fully fix IG-11. Also, Mando visits Bo-Katan and doesn't really do anything there. That's the end of the episode. Chapter 18, The Mines of Mandalore. Mando gets a droid from Pelimoto to take with him to Mandalore. He finds the mines of Mandalore but gets attacked. Grogu has to get Bo-Katan to save Din. Din also bathes in the water and is Mandalorian again. Same goes for Bo-Katan. Chapter 19, The Convert. This episode follows this scientist guy who appeared in earlier episodes for like 5 minutes total, if it's not less. Dr. Pershing. He works for the New Republic, now on the planet Coruscant. That's the planet we see the most in the prequel movies. He still wants to learn how to clone, even though that's sorta illegal now. He gets arrested and betrayed by this woman who was also from earlier seasons and had even less screen time than him. She worked or works for Moff Gideon. Mando does appear again at the last 5 minutes, but on a whole different planet, because he reunites with the other Mandalorians again. The episode does have Blade Runner 2049 vibes, but to me it sucks because I do not care about these characters, so let's move on. Chapter 20, The Foundling. In this episode, Din teaches Grogu the ways of the Mandalorians, and then one Mandalorian kid gets taken by some dragon. But the most important thing about this episode is that we learn who saved Grogu from Order 66. It was Master Caloran Beck, who is played by Ahmed Best, who also plays Jar Jar Binks in the prequels. Anyway, they get the kid back and that's all for the episode. Chapter 21, The Pirate. Navarro is under attack by Gorian Shard, the pirate leader from Chapter 17. We now follow Captain Carson Teva. He goes to Coruscant to ask for permission or backup to fight these pirates. He asks Colonel Tuttle, played by Tim Meadows, but Elia Kane interrupts. She is a character from Chapter 19. The Mandalorians defeat the pirates together. Bo-Katan is allowed to take her helmet off and the Mandalorians are planning to take back Mandalore. We do see the location of a rebel base this episode, the same one we see in the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. I forgot to mention that in my review, and Zeb also appears in this episode. Zeb is from Star Wars Rebels and also appears in the movie. Chapter 22, Guns for Hire. This is the episode where we meet Jack Black and Lizzo. The concept of this episode is cool because Mando and Bo-Katan are on the planet that Jack Black and Lizzo rule. There are droids working everywhere so people don't have to, but some droids are malfunctioning and killing people, which leads to a sort of detective style murder mystery. But the problem is the time in which they have to solve everything is like under 30 minutes. So it's like the clues are all handed to them. If this entire season was about this were multiple episodes, then it was cool, but now it just felt rushed. Oh, and Christopher Lloyd is in this episode. He's the one that actually controls the droids. He, of course, played Doc Brown in Back to the Future. Oh, and Bo-Katan now has the Darksaber since in an earlier episode Mando was captured by a droid and Bo-Katan rescued him. So she defeated the one who defeated him. It's like the Elder Wand in Harry Potter. Chapter 23, The Spies. All Mandalorians come together and Grogu gets to ride IG-11. We see Moff Gideon again after we learned that he escaped because at the end of season 2 he was captured. All the Mandalorians team up to take back Mandalore, but Moff Gideon is there to lure them into a trap. They manage to escape except for Paz Vizsla, the Mandalorian we see in other seasons, which to me didn't feel emotional or dramatic at all, but it was still better than if it was another random Mandalorian. Chapter 24, The Return. This is the final episode of The Mandalorian Season 3 and The Mandalorian show in general. The Mandalorians are still fighting and trying to escape Moff Gideon. Bo-Katan fights Gideon, but he destroys the Darksaber. They crash a Star Destroyer into the base and obviously that kills Moff Gideon in the explosion. Grogu protects Bo-Katan and Din Djarin from this explosion. Din earlier destroyed all clones made of Moff Gideon, so there is no way for him to come back. Din now adopts Grogu officially, and he is now his father. They call Grogu Din Grogu now, but they never do this in the movie, so forget it, I guess. Mando and Grogu are now gonna work for the New Republic, which is where the movie continues. And the new repaired IG-11 becomes the Marshal of Navarro, and that's it. This season is the worst from the three. I still like the ending though. I actually didn't remember anything from this episode, but I do like it. The other episodes are worse though than in other seasons. Especially the episode where Mando barely is in, the episode with Dr. Pershing, because he doesn't appear anymore after that episode. So what's the point to make it an entire episode? I guess my favorite episodes are the last ones. I do like the Jack Black and Lizzo episode, even though Lizzo cannot act at all. But I understand what they wanted to do with it. They should have just made the episode longer or take place over multiple episodes, like I said. The other problem I have with this season is that there was no clear goal for the Mandalorian. In season 1 and 2, we knew that he needed to bring Grogu back to his own kind. But what do we do now? Apparently take back Mandalore even though there were still Mandalorians living on that planet anyway, and Din originally isn't even from Mandalore. Also, Mando never removes his helmet this season, so no Pedro for us. At least the movie is better in my opinion, which does leave me to wonder when or where we will see these characters next. I wouldn't mind a 4th season, but the story feels like it's done. I don't know what their purpose would be right now, but having them do fun side missions would never bore me. So yeah, he does reveal his face in the movie, which brings the total count to 4. And I swear in my memory he would unmask way more than this, but I guess he doesn't. Now, if I had to have a favorite season and episode, it would be season 2, but very close by season 1. And for my favorite episode, I would pick the season 1 finale, Chapter 8, Redemption. Like I said in my review of the movie, I will be drawing something on the wall now for the Mandalorian. And what else can it be than his helmet? I mean, Grogu could have been an option, but Din is the Mandalorian, so here he goes. And in my opinion, Din Djarin is the best character I have seen so far, played by Pedro Pascal. So S tier and all the way to the front. I do prefer the show Game of Thrones over The Mandalorian, but character-wise, I like Mando better than Oberyn Martell. Of course, I can't rank it or give it stars on Letterboxd, but it would be around the 4 stars or 4.5 for the first 2 seasons. But this is my review of The Mandalorian show, plus the Book of Boba Fett. Have you watched the Mandalorian series or even the Mandalorian and Grogu movie? Let me know in the comments down below. And I hope I will see you all next time on another episode of ranking every Pedro Pascal project on Letterboxd and outside of it. So I'll see you then. Bye.
I can bring you in warm, or I can bring you in cold.